Good day, viewers. We'll discuss about feminism. I'm Johanna Joyce as Leoperme, your reporter in this topic. We'll go to our topic. First, I will discuss the etymology of feminism. Feminism comes from the word feminisme, a French word, and in late 19th century, it became feminism, that the word we use today. And we will discuss about the feminism logo. Feminism logo symbol consists of the planet Venus as a biological symbol of female gender. Then the clenched fist used as by anti-Vietnam War and Black Power movement. It first used this symbol appeared in 1968 as the symbol of women power in United States. Next, let's talk about the brief history of let's talk about before we go to the brief history of feminism, let's talk about what is feminism. Feminism is to advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. Next, committed to activity behalf of women's rights and interests. Feminism is a belief in social, economic, political equality of the sexes. Feminism to acknowledge social inequality based on gender. Feminism is also a collective movement of defending, establishing political and social economics. Ang feminism, inaalis nila yung inequality versus the male and female. Kasi alam naman natin ngayon, dati hindi napapahalagan yung pagiging babae. Kasi mas mahalaga sa panahon dati na ang mga lalaki. Kasi yun nga, nakakagawa sila ng lahat. Pero itong feminism theory na to, they advocate na yung inequality na pakinggan din yung side ng feminism ng mga babae. Then, let's talk about the types of feminism. A brief history of feminism. First, socialist feminism. Socialist feminism recognized the fundamental oppression of women. Next, wanted to integrate the recognition of sex discrimination within their works to achieve justice and equality. And socialist feminists, they focus almost exclusively on the unique traits and accomplishment of female gender. Dito, gusto lang nilang i-advocate or nagfo-focus sila sa unique traits and accomplishment of female gender. And yung discrimination sa work, sa paggawa nila para ma-achieve yung justice and equality. Kasi, 'di ba, for example, sa work, hindi kaya nito yung pagiging construction worker. 'Di ba, lagi nating nasa isip na pag construction worker dapat lalaki. Pero ngayon, marami na tayong nakikita na may babae din. Next type of feminism is radical feminism. Radical feminism is getting to the root, a philosophy emphasizing the patriarchal roots of inequality. Believes in eliminating the concept of gender entirely. Most extreme form of movement. Opposes existing political and social organization in general, more militant in their approach. Ito, dun sa socialist, pinaglalaban, nag-advocate lang sila. Pero itong radical, mas gusto nilang i-push talaga yung gusto nila. Yan. Next type of feminism is liberal feminism. Concentrate more on issues such as equality in workplace, in education, and in political rights. Focuses on how private life impedes or enhance public equality. Primary goals in gender equality in the public sphere as the protector of individual rights. Itong liberal feminism, ang best example nito, yung panahon dati na hindi walang right ang mga babae sa suffrage, yung makapagboto sila. Ito yung example nito. Next is cultural feminism. Emphasizes essential differences between men and women. Encouraging feminine behavior rather than masculine behavior, who argue that women are biologically or inherited more kind, caring, nurturing, and cooperative, and also argue that more inclusion of women in decision-making process. Dito, na i-emphasize nila na marami talagang nagagawa ang babae. Katulad na lang ng pag-aalaga, mas mabait daw ang babae kaysa sa lalaki. And ang argue dito is mas magaling daw, mas better na mag-decision, mas maganda daw yung decision ng lalaki kaysa sa babae. Next is Islamic feminism. To highlight deeply rooted teaching in equality of religion, creation of more equal and just society, women's rights, gender equality, and social justice grounded by the Islamic frameworks. Dito naman, about the topic, about Islamic feminism, siya yung lahat ng gagawin nila nakabase sa Quran nila, sa Bible, parang kung ihahalin tulad sa Bible ng mga Christian. Lahat ng sinabi sa Quran nila na kung anong dapat lang gawin ng babae, yun lang rin gagawin nila. Kasi alam ko, pag Islamic, bis na rin sa mga nagiging kaibigan ko or mga kakilala ko, mga Islam, mas pinapaboran nila, mas malaki ang halaga ng babae. Katulad kasi, for example, yung pag kinasal, maraming makukuha yung magulang. Kung gaano kamahal yung pagpapalaki nila sa anak na ng babae, ganun din yun ganun din yung ibabayad ng magiging asawa niya. Yun. All these types of feminism share similar and often identical concern, but the remedies and solution may vary. Yun, tama yung word na yan. Kasi, katulad ng ng radical feminism, mas gusto nila yung i-push talaga yung gusto nila. Mas maganda siya, mas more on gawa sila, more on action. Di katulad lang ng iba, advocate lang. Pero itong katulad ng feminism, ganun. Same concern lang rin sila, pero yung remedies nila, yung solution na magiging advocacies nila, magkakaiba. Yun lang po. Next will be, and now I give the floor to Miss Kyla Janito to discuss about feminism in the United States and Asia. Thank you.
first part of our report, we have discussed and defined yung feminism. And I just want to reiterate it, that feminism, it will never be about a movement or an ideology na ang aim ay palabasin na ang mga women ay mas better sa men. No, feminism is a movement kung saan feminism is an ideology and a movement kung saan women are striving to be heard, to be acknowledged, and to be given opportunities equally sa kung ano yung naibibigay ng society sa men. And we will be discussing feminism in different regions or continents. And I will be starting with feminism in the United States. So feminism in the United States, it is a collection of movement na ang aim is i-define, i-establish, i-defend ang state ng equality when it comes to political, social, cultural, and economic rights for women in the United States. And feminism in the United States is usually divided chronologically. Tapos, meron siyang first wave, second wave, third wave, and fourth wave. And according sa Gender Gap Index, United States is ranked as the 49th country on gender equality. Kaya makikita natin na massive ang influence ng feminism sa American setting and American politics. So, Seneca Falls Convention is what gave birth to the first wave of feminism in the United States. And Seneca Falls Convention, it is the first women's rights convention held in Seneca Falls on July 19 to 20 in the year 1848. And it was inspired by the fact na si Elizabeth Cady Stanton and si Lucretia Mott, hindi sila pinaupo sa World Anti-Slavery Convention in London just because babae sila. And that made them think na we should start calling out and address the condition of women in our society. Tapos, nung ginawa nila yung convention, meron silang isinulat na Declaration of Sentiment. That Declaration of Sentiment stated that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Tas sabi, dapat nag-specify din yung convention na yun ng mga specific grievances ng mga babae nung panahon nila. Like, bakit kailangan na i-require ng law na lahat ng wages, money, property, dapat laging ibabalik sa husband or dapat sa husband siya. And meron ding lacking of access to education and professional careers ng mga panahon nila. Kasi noon, lowly lang ang status ng mga babae sa society. It's either they are in the house or they are in the church. And furthermore, the declaration declared that women should have the right to both. And yung Seneca Falls Convention that gave birth to women's suffrage movement in 1848, kung saan sinabi nila na dapat magiging politically aware and politically engaged yung mga babae kasi they also have their inalienable rights when it comes to politics. So kung yung first wave ng feminism was marked or was inspired when two pioneers of women's right ay hindi pinaupo sa isang international convention in London just because they are babae. Yung second wave naman ng feminism, ginamit dito ay literature. It began when a book called The Second Sex was published. Kung saan, yung writer doon, she explicitly objected to the mainstream media image of women, stating that placing women at home limited their possibilities, and that wasted their talent and their potential. Na yung sabi niya, yung nuclear family image, kung saan yung lalaki yung provider, yung babae yung supporter, being at home, depicted and strongly marketed at the time, di daw na nire-reflect yung happiness and was rather degrading for women. And yung book na yon was widely credited and nasundan yon ng writing naman ni Gloria Steinem. She is a freelance journalist kung saan parang nag-undercover siya sa isang club, namely Playboy Bunny and Playboy Club. Ang sabi niya doon, very minimistreat yung mga babae sa club na yon just to gain male customers. And sabi nung club doon, sa club's manual, parang operation manual, ang sabi doon, there are many pleasing ways they can employ to stimulate the club's liquor volume. And by 1968, si Steinem, naging most influential figure siya in the movement and support for, yun, sa Amerika kasi, they legalized abortion from the early times. And daycare, okay. Si Steinem kasi naging most influential figure siya in the movement and support for legalized abortion, and free daycare had become the two leading objectives for feminists at that time. So, dati pa lang, unang panahon pa lang, meron na talagang ideya ang mga Americans to legalize abortion. And the fact na ngayon, meron talagang legal ang abortion sa kanila, mean na naging successful yung movement nila. Madami rin nasundan niya ng mga iba't ibang mga legal victories, such as the Equal Pay Act, the 7 of the Civil Rights Act, kung saan nag-ban ng sex discrimination in employment, at madami pang iba na ang bottom line ay pinaglaban yung mga civil and legal rights ng mga babae. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Equal Pay Act, the Education Amendments, diba? Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Siguro kung mayroon lang major disappointment ang second wave ng feminism movement sa United States was nung hindi napatupad yung Comprehensive Child Development Bill of 1972. Kasi kung natupad sana yon, meron sanang multi-billion dollar national daycare system. Pero vinito yon ni President Nixon. Pag sinabi natin vinito yon, it was passed by the Congress pero hindi niya inaprubahan. Tapos, sabi ng mga historians, yung second wave feminist era in the American ay natapos ng 1980 with the feminist sex wars, kung saan nagkaroon ng split sa movement over issues of sexuality and pornography. Kaya, dun pa pumasok yung third wave ng feminism. Yun yung in-address or in-usher ng third wave ng feminism in the early 1990s. And just like what I have said, yung third wave ng feminism in the United States, nagsimula siya kasi si Anita Hill in 1991, inakusahan niya si Clarence Thomas ng sexual harassment. And itong si Thomas, dininay niya yung accusation. And after extensive debate, yung United Senate voted 52-48 in favor of Thomas. And in 1992, in response to Anita Hill sexual harassment case, American feminist Rebecca Walker published an article in Ms. Magazine entitled Becoming the Third Wave, in which she stated, "I'm not a post-feminist. I am the third wave," which coined the term third wave. And yung Third Wave Direct Action Corporation was founded by Rebecca Walker herself, kung saan ano yon, multiracial, multicultural, multi-issue organization to support young activists. Yung original or initial mission ng organization na yon was to fill a void in young women's leadership and to mobilize young people to become more involved socially and politically in their communities. Tapos, yung fourth wave ng feminism sa US refers to a resurgence of interest in feminism na nangyari noong 2012. And it is associated with the use of social media. Alam mo, di ba, madaming focus, yung pinaka-focus ng fourth wave is justice for women and opposition to sexual harassment and violence against women. At ang sabi, fourth wave feminism is defined by technology and is characterized particularly by the use of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, and blogs such as Feministing to challenge misogyny and further gender equality. And yung mga issues ng fourth wave feminism, nag-focus siya sa state and workplace harassment, campus or sexual assault, and rape culture. Tapos, yung mga nangyari na naharas yung babae or there was an abuse, murder ng mga babae, yun yung parang nagpalakas sa movement ng fourth wave feminism in the US na up to now, very prominent pa rin. Kasi merong mga movement or campaigns in the United States like the Mattress Performance, the Time's Up Now movement, and the 10 Hours of Walking in NYC as a Woman. And hanggang ngayon naman makikita nyo naman na very malakas na yung parang very empowered na yung mga women sa panahon natin. And that is because may mga grupo ng babae who started the movement. And in the early 1990s, the Riot Girl movement began in Olympia, Washington and Washington, D.C. Ang goal lang naman nun is to give women the power to control their voices and artistic expressions. However, Riot Girls' emphasis on universal female identity and separatism often appears more closely allied with the second wave feminism than with the third wave. Kasi yung third wave feminism, it sought to question, reclaim, and redefine the ideas, words, or yung konsepto ng media that have transmitted ideas about gender roles, womanhood, beauty, sexuality, and other things. Ang third wave feminism, madami yung naging icon, si Madonna, Queen Latifah, si Angelina Jolie, si Emma Watson, si Beyonce, si Lady Gaga, as well as yung mga fictional characters like si Mulan, di ba? Third wave feminists also used internet and modern technology to enhance their movement, which allowed for information and organization to reach a larger audience. Di ba napansin natin, anong mga 1990s, very strong na yung movement ng feminism. And to the extent na yung audience nila expanded to many male celebrities such as si Leonardo DiCaprio. Tapos, yung fourth wave ng feminism sa US refers to a resurgence of interest in feminism na nangyari noong 2012. And it is associated with the use of social media. Alam mo, di ba, madaming focus, yung pinaka-focus ng fourth wave is justice for women and opposition to sexual harassment and violence against women. At ang sabi, fourth wave feminism is defined by technology and is characterized particularly by the use of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, and blogs such as Feministing to challenge misogyny and further gender equality. And yung mga issues ng fourth wave feminism, nag-focus siya sa state and workplace harassment, campus or sexual assault, and rape culture. Tapos, yung mga nangyari na naharas yung babae or there was an abuse, murder ng mga babae, yun yung parang nagpalakas sa movement ng fourth wave feminism in the US na up to now, very prominent pa rin. Kasi merong mga movement or campaigns in the United States like the Mattress Performance, the Time's Up Now movement, and the 10 Hours of Walking in NYC as a Woman. And hanggang ngayon naman makikita nyo naman na very very malakas na yung parang very empowered na yung mga women sa panahon natin. And that is because may mga grupo ng babae who started the movement. Kapag pinag-usapan naman ang feminism in Asia, ang pinaka magiging main topic mo dyan, yung women's liberation movement in Asia. And that is a movement that started in the late 1960s hanggang 1970s. Women's liberation movement in Asia. Parang ang mission nila is to redefine women's relationships to the family and the way women express their sexuality. And itong movement na to in Asia, it was influenced by the Western. Yung katulad nung sinabi ko kanina, na yung feminist movement in United States, that was stirring enough na nagbigay ng birth sa iba't ibang movement na nakarating hanggang Asia. Sa China, nagkaroon sila ng cultural revolution kung saan binigyan ng chance yung mga babae na i-express yung art nila. And in India, yung caste system, na-liberate doon yung mga babae. Kasi hindi mo na daw pwedeng i-separate or i-class ang mga tao based on their gender. And in Israel, nagkaroon na sila ng chance na labanan yung pagtingin sa kanila na hindi sila important. So parang nagkaroon sila ng chance to fight the oppression. And in Japan naman, parang they focused more on sexuality rather than the equality. Kasi parang sa kanila, gusto nilang i-recognize yung women's autonomy and freedom to choose their own social roles. Sa Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, liberationist ang movement kung saan nilabanan nila yung sexism, colonialism, and economic exploitation. Other countries like Turkey, Islam, ang nilabanan naman nila is yung domestic violences. So basically, nag-grow yung movement in Asia. And at its core, feminism in Asia largely arose in response to Western traditions that restricted the rights of women. Kaya, matatawag na yung Asian feminism or yung women's liberation movement in Asia, it built bridges among women in between different. It is growing, so is the backlash. Kasi sabi, women, especially in Southeast Asia, we know of feminism. We just haven't necessarily seen it around us though. What does it mean? Parang may isang case study in Malaysia na ang subject niya ay equality, pero ang sabi niya, um, kapag nag-usap-usap daw doon sa Malaysia, pag sinabi ng mga babae na, are we going to fight for equality? Ang sasabihin ng mga politicians and ng mga tao sa society, sure, it is a very important issue and we will do everything to get there. So parang pero pag pinasok naman ng mga babae na, so does that mean we will finally recognize marital rape as rape? Tapos parang magiging ang response ng mga tao, that is a good idea, but proving marital rape in court is too hard. Tapos, pag sinabi naman doon ng mga babae, okay, can we at least ease up on abortion laws? Mga sabihin naman ng mga politician, hindi nila yun kayang gawin. And yung women, pag sinabi naman na, can we not condone rapists marrying their victims? Kasi sa ibang bansa, that is I don't know how that become possible, na maaalis yung liability ng lalaki sa rape kung pakakasalan niya yung victims niya. Pero sasabihin ng mga ibang tao na yung marriage, that would save the girl from further humiliation. And it may sound exaggerating, pero that's not. Kaya daw mga Southeast Asian, very traditional and very strong yung pag-uphold daw natin sa mga na-instill sa atin na lesson. And we believe na Westerners push for globalization, feminism, and all those movement because they want to erase culture, tradition, and religion. When in reality nga, feminism is not about that. Though may mga extreme na feminism, again, ang goal lang naman kasi ng feminism is to give equal opportunities, to be protected by the law equally, and to be seen and acknowledged by the society na kapareho ng pagtingin sa mga lalaki. At saka, hindi nag-work ang feminism sa Southeast Asia because people see it as an invasion. And just to conclude, while in America, very naging successful and naging rampant yung movement ng feminism sa kanila, tayo rito in Asia, we are still parang in the middle of it. Parang nasa middle pa rin tayo ng pagpapatunay na feminism is an ideology and a movement worth fighting for. And meron pang dalawa na continent na pag-uusapan. And I give the floor to Liza May Oncita to discuss about feminism in Europe and in Africa. Thank you for listening.
So hello, my name is Lisa Leoncita and my report is about feminism in Europe. And these are the highlights of my report. First is women's politics, the feminist movement, the first demands, the fight for suffrage, the press and public organizations, and feminists in 1930. Women's politics, the feminist movement. Some of us are familiar with the term of masculine tyranny. They absolutely oppose it by coining a term, action feminists, to describe all those women in all societies and cultures who have opposed male hegemony. Most feminists are intellectuals. They are almost educated and from the upper classes family. Basically, they wrote, of course. Virginia Woolf called the daughters of educated men where education for women is useless. Why? Because the brothers or the fathers educate their daughters or sisters, but the knowledge is useless. Why? Because the society closed all doors for them. Women begin to express a collective voice during the French Revolution. They demand about access to education, the elimination of discriminatory laws, and the right to representation in the state. This is a pre-revolutionary petitions. Olympe Gauges, who in 1791 published the Declaration of the Rights of Women and of the Female Citizen. Olympe Gauges actually influenced by natural justice thinkers and by the philosophers who believe in social contract. And the works of her mimic the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Rousseau's social contract. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen from August 26, 1789, which declared that men are born and remain free and equal in rights in Article 1, that feminists suggested that equality was granted to all human beings. English in 18th century, English were also going down the path of political and philosophical debate. Mary Wollstonecraft, she focuses on the argument on the constrictions of women's lives and the imbalance between the sexes, and she also published the Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1793. The Vindication of the Rights of Women was a key work for the later feminist movement. After Revolutionary period, Europe was immersed on an era of conservative reaction. They believed that domestic life and the family was best for women, and they insist the subordination of women and men. Now we go down to the first demands. Women's first demands were focused primarily on economic, educational, and political rights. In the Napoleonic Code, women in European societies denied full economic right, especially married women under guardianship of her husband. Married Women's Property Act in England, which recognized their right to property and spend their money as they please. This reform is from the radical political parties. Norway in the 1840s and 50s equalized inheritance and gave women the freedom to go into business in 1864. Actually, this reform is not about that women is fighting for their rights, but because it also the response to widespread demands in European society. Napoleonic Code of 1803 from France, Civil Code of 1889 from Spain, which ensured reduced personal autonomy for women in so much as their goods and income were administered by their husbands. It was only in the 20th century that these countries managed to revoke discriminatory legislation. Norway's Professional Freedom Law of 1866 permitted access to higher education and to exercise of the liberal professions. Christine de Pisan or Mary Wollstonecraft were women who earned their own living, and they demanded the right to hold those jobs for which they were qualified. Now we're going to talk about the fight for suffrage of the feminists. In British suffrage movement has divided between one moderate and one radical. Moderate is the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies led by Millicent Fawcett. Dedicated itself to political propaganda, rallies, and persuasion, all within the bounds of the law. But 40 years of activity had not been enough to break the resistance of the authority. So the radical one arise, and they called themselves as suffragists, led by Emmeline Pankhurst, founded the Women's Social and Political Union, and its goal was for obtaining the vote. As the result of radicalization of the suffragists, prison terms and hunger strikes became common political responses in the face of growing repression. For researchers, this radicalization contributed to winning the female vote in Great Britain. In 1928, they gained the right of suffrage. The Reform Bill of 1932, which marks the beginning of the English suffrage agitation, but it was just a small victory. Thus, women were made eligible for local government posts, and later they were made voters in local elections. But only on after World War I the national vote was gained by the women. However, on the other hand, northern countries like Norway and Finland were the first to commit to political equality and the first to establish women's right to vote. In Norway, with strong movement born in 1830, they quickly gained political equality. And since 1906, the Finnish Diet had been elected by universal suffrage. It was the first country in Europe where women participated in national elections. In 1910, in Finland, universal suffrage was established and women enjoyed full civil rights. And in 1912, they eligible for almost all responsibilities of the state, unlike the other European countries. In contrast to the countries of Finland and Norway, countries with Roman heritage like France and Spain lagged behind. Since the 1880s, French women could elect and be elected in local educational and welfare councils, but the vote for National Assembly would only come after the World War II. So in Spain in 1870, which demand full political equality, but it was not until the Second Republic and the debate of Constitution of 1931. Why? Because the 1931 Constitution was very democratic and they established universal suffrage and it did not exclude the women. These are some of the universal suffrage dates. In Great Britain, 1928, Norway, 1912, in Finland, 1906, which is the first country in European who exercised the national vote, and France, 1945, and Spain in 1931. Now we go to the press and public organization. The press and public organizations, which are were sometimes or it not always related to each other, but the scheme is the creation of a feminist newspaper is parallel to creation of an organization, and the newspaper serve as a magnetic attraction to feminists and as an organ of propaganda. Here are some of the published newspaper of feminists: our English Women's Journal, that made itself major reference point of English feminism. The Revolt, it is considered one of the best French newspaper of the era, with their long-term influential activities. Editors like Caroline Remy, Severin, or Helen C. not only live from their work but also chronicled French political life. This work in public writing took root in the very heart of feminism and showed itself to be absolutely essential in the fight against being forgotten. Some examples of feminist organizations are French Revolutionary Clubs, Saint-Simonians of 1830. These organizations are the means by which energies are focused and strategies and models of political action are developed in order to solve the social question of women. For example, our evidence is in the former country organizations recreated from the middle of the century, which are clear response to misogynist politics. Fighting powerfully against abuse or in favor of rights, these organizations are used to endow feminists with identities so that in the name of this organization, the entire arsenal of democratic expression is mobilized. The newspapers, rallies, meetings, demonstrations, and national and international congresses. So lastly, in feminism in Europe, we discuss about the feminists in 1930. In broad outline, we have divided the feminist movement into its political and social aspects. French and English, a political and democratic feminism oriented towards the full integration of women into policy. It is so clear that the expression of English and French are for the fight for their right to suffrage. Spain and Italy, where feminists primarily emphasizes the right to education and the improvement of social conditions so that there are in social aspects of feminism. Now we go to feminism in Africa. Nigerian feminism is actually one of the popular feminist movements in Africa. Of course, women's liberation is their ultimate goal, and they formed in 1914. Wabiala movement is against both indigenous and British men who had jointly sidelined them in decision making. And Women's War, where 10,000 women participated and dozens lost their lives fighting back against a drop in female authority. So why they are fighting back against a drop in female authority, and why they are so against of sideline them in decision making? It is because the feminist thinkers often draw inspiration from the history of women's leadership roles in African societies. They ruled kingdoms and lead wars of conquest since the earliest epoch of human civilization. The evidence of it is in 17th century Berber queen known as the Kahina of Maghreb. She is a leader or they rule in Africa. This is some of the organizations or women organizations in Nigeria. WIN, or Women in Nigeria, an organization which was founded in 1983 with a clear agenda to establish a ideologically feminist movement in the country, but it was replaced in 2008 from WIN to Nigerian Feminist Forum. And today's organization in Nigeria are Stand to End Rape, Afri Development Info, the Nigerian Women's Trust Fund, Colored Africa, and As Equals Africa. African feminist movement at large insists that creative expressions such as plays, poetry, art, and fictions are sites where women can challenge male dominance as a form of political and intellectual interventions. Some of their theater is The Cut by Christine Oshuniyi and Wait by Bikia Graham Douglas. And this is the end of our report. I hope you learned something about feminism. Have a good day and more power.